question has come up again: when can you legally draw your gun? And understand, there's lots of different things that can happen that can go wrong when you draw your gun. So we'll talk about that in just a minute. But first, we've got that giveaway going on. It's a secret. I can't tell you what it is. You know what it is. It's happening right now. It's absolutely free, but it does end really soon. So click the link in the description below to learn what you can win. We're talking about when you can legally draw your gun. Now, drawing your gun is the precursor to using deadly force. You have to draw your gun before you can use deadly force. Use your gun, and we define deadly force as the intentional use of a firearm or other instrument, the use of which would cause a high probability of death. So you've got to draw that gun before you can use it intentionally to stop a bad guy. When can you do that? You can do that when you can reasonably articulate an imminent threat of death or great bodily harm. If you feel like you're going to die, you can draw your gun. Not only do you have to feel like you're going to die, you have to be able to explain that to other people, namely the investigating officers. Typically, I would say the responding officers, but I'm going to tell you not to speak to the responding officers until you have an attorney present. So might go from responding officers to your case being handed off to the investigators later on when you make your statement. So you want to be able to articulate to the investigating officers, who will put that in a report, and then the district attorney will look at that, the prosecutor will look at that, and if it keeps going, you may have to explain it so that a judge and jury can understand why you drew your firearm. That's when you can legally draw your firearm. If you can't explain why you felt you were facing an imminent threat of death or great bodily harm, you will likely be charged with a crime. It could be criminal misuse of a firearm. It could be negligent use of a firearm. It could be intentionally pointing a gun at someone. There's all sorts of charges that can be levied against you if you pull out your gun when you don't need to. The common term is brandishing, but we can't find a law anywhere that says you can't brandish your gun. The laws are much more specific about that, about what you're doing with your firearm. But in order to have your gun pulled out legally, you have to be facing an imminent threat of death or great bodily harm, or protecting someone else from a threat of death or great bodily harm, and you have to be able to explain why you did that. Now, if you pull out your gun and you are not required to fire it, if the threat dissipates, the guy just runs away, puts his hands up, surrenders, whatever, when you pull out your gun and you don't need to fire it, you're still going to have to explain why you pulled out your gun. The guy runs away and calls the police and reports you for pointing a gun at him, you're still going to need to explain why you pulled out your gun. Pulling the gun out and getting ready for use is a very important step that you're going to have to be able to explain to the investigators, the prosecutors, the judges, the jury, things like that, to make sure that you're not getting in trouble for doing what you felt you needed to do. Now remember, like I said at the very beginning, pulling out your gun is the precursor to using deadly force, because deadly force is the intentional use of a firearm or other instrument. So you've got to draw that gun and get it into action. If you draw the gun when you are in fear of your life, and then you decide you don't need to use it, I'm still going to suggest that you call 911 and report the incident so that you can be the reporting party, not the person they're looking for. That somebody else, a whole bunch of other people called 911 and said, big guy in a black shirt just pulled out a gun. Now the cops are coming looking for that person in black shirt, looking who's got the gun. So they're already thinking of you as a suspect in that case, not as a person who is reporting a crime and that you have just stopped a crime. It's going to be an investigation. Yes, you're going to need to speak to an attorney. Yes, all of those bad things that are going to happen that surround a police investigation for the use of a firearm are going to happen. But if you follow the rules, if you do everything correctly, and if you can explain why you reasonably believed that you were facing an imminent threat of death or great bodily harm, then your actions will be judged justifiable. They will be legal. You will have the right to do what you did. if you can't, if you just pulled out your gun because you were angry and you wanted somebody to get away from you or something like that, you're going to face the consequences for that. We are responsibly armed gun owners. We are doing the right thing. We are following the law. We are there to assist the police in their investigation, but only insofar as it won't damage our case when we want to defend ourselves. So again, I'm going to ask that you not speak to the police until you have spoken to your attorney, until you've gotten just counsel from your attorney, and that might cross you up a little bit. You might end up sitting for a night in jail or something like that. You might end up being worried and being overly stressed for a couple of days while this stuff works its way through the basic situation that comes following police interaction. But understand, again, when people ask me, when can I really draw my gun? You know, we're defenders. We're always behind the curve. The action is happening out there and we're reacting to it. So we have to react, and we're always going to be a little bit behind that curve. And we're always going to be in a reactionary mode because we are reacting to that stimulus that's out there in front of us. But you have to reasonably believe that you are facing an imminent threat of death or great bodily harm. I know I've said that like 4 or 5 times in this video already, but that's when you can legally draw your gun. And if that threat goes away before you fire your gun, great, let the threat go away. If you don't actually have to fire the gun, please don't fire the gun. You'll be much better off for it in the long run, but you're still going to have to explain why you had that gun out, because police are probably going to show up, and I would advise you to be the one to call them and then make sure that you get in touch with your attorney and you speak with your attorney before speaking to the police. There you have it. That's when you can legally draw your gun. You're pulled over by the police and you're carrying concealed. Do you need to do anything special in this scenario? Like tell the officer you have a gun. Click this video right next to me and I'll break down that scenario step by step on what you should do.